Libby, what are you going to take away from these elections? How important is Virginia going to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be the first indication of enthusiasm for Democrats. It will be the first real election without President Trump on the ballot as well. And as David said, I mean, this has become a very close election, and a state that President won by 10 points, and no Republican has won statewide race for almost 12 years. So it's clearly going to be a negative indicator if Youngkin wins, for sure. But even if McAuliffe just pulls this out very closely, I think Democrats will take this as a read that they, on Capitol Hill at least, that they have to pass their agenda immediately because time will be limited. But we should caveat here that we have a year before the actual midterm elections, and a lot can change based on the economy, COVID, what have you. So it will definitely be a data point, and again, it could be foreboding should Youngkin win.
I'm wondering if we're going to see something similar to what happened with the Republican Party and Trump at the end, right before last presidential election, where he still had a following, but the Republican Party in different states didn't as much. And there was a divergence there. Is it possible that even though Biden's polling poorly, that you have the governors and the mayors in the Democratic Party polling better, or are they too linked?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the big question mark, Alex. I mean, clearly the polling in Virginia would indicate that they are more linked than certainly Terry McAuliffe would like. But, you know, Terry sort of run as more of a centrist Democrat. Clearly, you know, Biden has been sort of trying to ingratiate some of the more progressive wing of the party. So that may benefit McAuliffe in the end. I think it's just too early to know. We'll know after tomorrow night. But again, you know, we have to just put this in context. You know, caveat not to read too much into an election. You know, an off-cycle election that's a year away from the midterms.
Libby, let's talk about building back better. Are we going to make progress this week?
Yes, we're now into the 7th month of the Build Back Better framework agenda, the negotiating back and forth. We believe that we will make progress this week. We could actually see a vote on both the bipartisan infrastructure framework that, of course, already passed the Senate in August. And we could see a vote in the House on the Build Back Better agenda. Now, unlike the BIF, the bipartisan framework, which will go right to the president for his signature, the Build Back Better agenda then has to go to the Senate to get passed. And honestly, just knowing the Senate will likely be amended in the Senate, meaning that it will have to go back to the House. So our view at PIMCO here and what we're telling our clients is that we have to really wait probably until the end of the year to see both of these bills be signed into law. But, you know, Guy, just to be clear, we do believe they will both be signed into law. You know, we've been saying this for a while. Failure is just not an option for Democrats here.
Yeah, just as we keep saying, like, time is ticking. We are waiting for President Biden to speak over at COP26. And I can't help but notice he's there. He's pushing a climate agenda that has been reduced and yet not yet passed in the U.S. and putting pressure on Saudi Arabia to boost their own oil production. What kind of credibility do you think he has right now in the international community to get something like this done?
It clearly, for Democrats and for the president in particular, he was hoping that he would be able to be in Scotland with the Build Back Better agenda passed. Of course, climate is a big focus of that. And we should say that even though Senator Manchin has opposed some parts of those climate provisions, the climate provisions in the framework that was released last week by the White House and will likely be very similar to what is actually signed into law does have a very big climate component to it, almost $550 billion of spending and tax breaks for renewables and for other kind of climate-friendly provisions. So just to be clear, climate is a big part of this Build Back Better agenda, even though it has been scaled back, as you said, Alex. But to your point, how credible is he? Well, look, I mean, I think he'll make the argument that governing is not easy. It is absolutely messy, and that's sort of what we're seeing here in the United States. But clearly, he would have preferred to have gone to Scotland with this in the rearview mirror and more, as of a platform on the international stage.
If he makes progress with Build Back Better, if there is signs of progress in Washington, if he delivers in Glasgow, if there's a kind of positive message, a halo effect that comes from this, are these the lows for the president in terms of his opinion poll ratings, do you think?
Yeah, and you know, guys, I think this is so sort of multifaceted. You know, clearly, you know, competence is going to be, I think, a big input into these approval ratings. And I do think that the view of his competence and the White House's competence might be at a low here. So if they can win, they can, in our view, pass the two of these bills, we could see an upswing. But of course, a lot will depend on the economy. A lot will depend on COVID. Will we see, you know, another sort of variant, you know, another outbreak of COVID in the winter? So a lot of this, again, is sort of multifaceted, but certainly passing these two bills will help the president. So I think you could arguably say that this could be sort of his lowest, sort of a fall slump, if you will.